You will have heard a lot of buzz about Secret Agent, which is a new film from Brazilian writer-director Kleber Mendonça Filho, whose back catalogue includes Aquarius, which is a film I reviewed on the show here, which I really, really loved. So this has got right at the heart of it Wagner Moura, who apparently first Brazilian to win Best Actor at Cannes, went on to win a Golden Globe, is one of 4 Oscar nominations that the film has. Others include Best International Feature and Best Film. So the first thing to say about Secret Agent is how to describe it. The tagline description is a neo-noir historical political thriller, which doesn't even begin to describe just how strange and unpredictable it is. I mean, I was thinking you might... when I was watching it, I kept asking myself, what genre is this? Because it's very, very hard to pin down. Some people have compared it to, for example, Walter Sallis's I'm Still Here, because it's about life under a corrupt dictatorship, but it's also about responsibility and masculinity and, weirdly, the complexities of academic funding and, I would argue, the rise of strongman popularism in contemporary politics. So it's set in 1970s Brazil during the military dictatorship. Begins with Wagner Moura's character pulls into a gas station in this little car. And the gas station is in the middle of nowhere. And on the ground is a dead body with some cardboard over it. And nobody is saying anything about the fact that there's a dead body there, least of all the guy running the gas station. I'm going to play you a clip, but I'm going to translate the clip in advance so that you can understand it. So basically, the garage guy says, "You want me to fill her up?" Looks over to the body, says, "Don't worry about that. It's okay. You want to fill her up?" And he says, "Yeah, fill her up, but what about that?" And the garage guy says, "Oh, it happened last Sunday. Poor devil came with a knife to steal oil cans. Rivinaldo, the night guy, grabbed a 12-gauge, shot him in the face and chest. He never got up again. He got what he deserved. But don't worry, you're a customer. That's nothing to do with you. Okay?" Here's the clip.
É para completar? Pode ficar tranquilo, tá tudo em ordem aí. É para completar?
Rapaz... É para completar, mas... O que é aquilo ali?
Isso foi domingo. Um infeliz aí veio roubar uma lata de óleo com a peixeira na mão. A Rivanete, que é o menino que trabalha aqui à noite, pegou lá 12 e deu 2 TB. Uma na caixa dos peitos e outra na cara e não levantou mais. Esse é um meliante, mereceu. Pode ficar tranquilo, sou cliente, é bem atendido aqui. Não tem nada a ver com isso. Viu?
So basically, the guy in the car is a widowed professor who's returning to his hometown, Recife, and he moves into a place that we only gradually come to realize is a kind of refuge for political dissidents. And it's overseen by Donna Sebastiana, brilliantly played by Tanya Maria, who's the kind of matriarch of the community. And he's a former academic. Apparently, somewhere in the past, he crossed a corrupt minister. He adopts a pseudonym, Marcello. He gets a job in the local identity card office, and he starts searching for records of his own deceased mother, of whom there are no records. He has a son who is completely obsessed with the idea of seeing Jaws after having seen a poster for it. And his father-in-law runs a cinema. Meanwhile, in what appears to be a completely separate narrative, a severed leg has been found within the belly of a shark. Whose leg is it? Where did it come from? This is in real life. And then there's a third strand in which a corrupt official hires 2 hitmen to track and kill the professor for reasons which are initially unclear, but are obviously motivated by hatred and revenge. So apparently the script for this was partly written when the director, who grew up in this area, was making Pictures of Ghosts, a documentary, which we're going to talk about next week, because that's out next week as a movie release. And key scenes in the film play out in the projection booth of this cinema. So there's a lot of cinema going on in the background of it. In fact, one of the things that's happening is that there's a very famous horror movie from the 1970s which is playing, which is terrifying audiences. The whole thing is shot on vintage lenses, which give it the feeling, the kind of the atmosphere of a film from the period that it's set in. So it has that kind of 1970s thing hard baked into it. And in fact, the director did a season at the Lincoln Center in America, which was movies that he was inspired by, which included Point Blank, Investigation of a Citizen Above Suspicion, Spielberg's Close Encounters, 20 Years Old. So there was a bunch of movies that were feeding into this vision. Also, apparently, the story of the severed leg is a real thing, because apparently there were newspaper reports at the time that this severed hairy leg, which had been found, had gone on the rampage and was terrorizing people. And it was a news story. And it was a news story that allowed the news agencies to cover up for the fact that genuine horrible violence was happening by kind of putting it under one of these these mad sort of, local mythology stories.
Sorry, so was the story that this leg on its own was hopping around?
The leg, yes, precisely. And there is a moment in the film in which we actually see that brought to life. As I said, in terms of this thing about what genre are we in, one moment it's a political thriller, one moment it's a thing about university funding, one minute it's a father and son drama, and then in one section it is a sort of mocked up B-movie style recreation of a hairy leg terrorizing local residents. And all these things are going on at the same time. There's also a final feature appearance by Udo Kier, who's got a fantastic, it's only a small role, I think it would almost count as a cameo, but a brilliant sort of final appearance. Here's the thing about the film. It sounds, from my description, like it should not work at all. And one of the most difficult things about it is it's very, very hard to describe because it works brilliantly and I can't quite figure out why. A lot of the time, movies settle into a particular groove, a particular genre, okay, I know what this is saying, I know why it's saying it, I know how it's saying it. The thing with The Secret Agent is it never does that. And the argument, I suppose, would be that actually the way in which we experience real life is a myriad of things going on at the same time, all of which appear to be from different moods. But the real genius of it is it doesn't play like it is disconnected. In fact, quite the opposite. I watched it with a good lady, Professor Her Indoors, who suddenly at one point said, this has turned into a drama about university funding. And of course, then she got very excited. But she was,
Each to their own.
Each to their own. But the brilliant thing about it is completely engrossing and it keeps you on your toes and you believe in the characters, you love the characters, you live in this world. And this world with all the things going on. I listened to an interview with Wagner Mayo about when he was talking about what he thought the film was about. And he said, definitely for him, one of the things that it's about is about masculinity. And it's about this kind of strongman politics, politics of dictatorship and what happens to people's lives under dictatorships. Like I said, that whole early image of the dead body just lying on the ground. And incidentally, when the police do turn up, they don't turn up to deal with the dead body. They turn up to interrogate the guy driving the car who they're sure must have done something wrong and they can extort money from him. So it is about the madness of life under a corrupt political system. In fact, weirdly enough, at one point, I thought of Terry Gilliam's Brazil, which I'll mention again later on. Brazil isn't called Brazil because it's set in Brazil. It's because of a tune, the watercolors of Brazil. Anyway, but that whole thing about if you live in a system which is completely corrupt, everything around you seems to be mad. Honestly, it's an extraordinary film and it's got a brilliant central performance. And I think it's great that it's received such universal acclaim because it really demonstrates that cinema can be as adventurous and as ambitious as it wants, and audiences will go with it because audiences are much smarter than a lot of the mainstream Hollywood production line imagines.